Well, I think it was probably about 1927. The house was built in 1927, and I was born in 1929. So we grew up and we had a pretty good life. We had everything we wanted, more or less, And we were pretty lucky, and we didn't know perhaps how lucky we were. I don't think we're just normal kind of life. Such as giving tradesmen lunch on the front veranda when they came around. There was a Rawley man who used to come around, and he used to come around about lunchtime, and he'd sit on the front veranda, and no one would give him cups of tea or even lunch. Yeah, there's Mr. Mackenzie used to come around with his groceries on the portion cart. It was the soft drink man Loys. They used to come around. The iceman used to come around, with the ice for the fridge. But I can remember in the house that there were all sorts of books. The Left Book Club. There was a huge range of books in our house. Progressive thinking, And I remember we had the book All Quiet on the Western Front of the house. Remember, and both my mother and father were always progressive thinkers. Part of the thinking probably came from the First World War, and then there was danger of another one. She wasn't too happy about the fact there might be another one. She was a bit concerned about Bob when he got called up. She used to go into the city to go to meetings and things, and then she'd come home pretty late and have to get tea ready and things.
So Rhoda had a very busy life. She was a mother of 5 boys, but she also worked for the Surrey Hills Auxiliary to the new Box Hill Hospital, was president of the New Housewives Association in 1949 and vice president of the Australian Union of Women in 1952 in Victoria. Here, Rhoda writes into the newspapers in 1948 about some interference from the government in regards to films that covered from communist countries. And here, in her role in the New Housewives Association, she's writing into The Age, supporting housewives against the increases in electricity and gas prices from the government. She also, in her role in the New Housewives Association, marched amongst the streets of Melbourne. In her role as Vice President in the Australian Union of Women, she writes into the Argus about labour shortages and the Bakers Union and fighting for there not to be cash paid for deliveries. So she was always supporting the housewives. Here she is looking at some of the attitudes as a peace activist, where mothers had voted that cadets might need to be in all schools, and Rhoda advocated for a peaceful way of life and how children are educated in this manner. And in 1952, on behalf of the Union of Australian Women, she led the delegation for Australia to the Conference in Defence of Children in April 1952 in Vienna. So some of the things in this conference included the focus that children need peace like flowers need the sun. There were 3 major resolutions. One, that education was the right of every child, that health was needed to be for every child, and the third part focused on how education might proceed. So it was all about how they might create libraries for children that had non-violent literature in them. So this was quite a major, significant contribution that Rhoda had in her life. She was an advocate for women, for children, and for the community. And without the likes of Rhoda, we wouldn't be in the places that we are today, and we are still fighting for these kind of social issues in our society.